There is a little story I want to share with you. The story is not from a hadith or from the Quran, and I don't know if it's an authentic, really it did happen, but the moral of the story is amazing. My sheikh told me this once when I was a kid, and he says, look, there's this story, and the moral is important, about another sheikh, a righteous man, who saw a dream. And in this dream, he saw that he's running in the jungle. Have you heard this one? He's running in the jungle. And as he's running in the jungle, behind him there is a lion or a tiger that is chasing after him and ferociously wants to eat him. He says, I'm running in my dream and I wanted to escape from the tiger until I saw a well. So I jumped into the well, not thinking what's at the bottom, but just to escape the tiger. He goes, as I jumped into the well in my dream, I grabbed onto a rope that was hanging. And I held onto this rope with all my life. The tiger walked away and I could hear its roar fading away. He says, I felt safe. But then suddenly, after a little while, I saw beneath me in the well an anaconda, big snake coming up towards me, about to devour me. He says, so I started climbing upwards. But as I was climbing upwards on the rope, I saw right at the top two mice, one white and one black, and each one of them is nibbling away at the edge top of the rope. If I don't make it in time, the rope will snap and the anaconda will devour me. So I couldn't make it in time. Instead, I started shaking the rope, he says in his dream, trying to shake the mice off, but he couldn't. As he was shaking it, he started swerving from side to side, hitting the sides of the well. He said, I felt something sticky on the walls. Because as I looked at the stickiness, some of it went into my mouth and I realized it was honey. Sweet, beautiful, indulging honey. In my dream, it tasted amazing. He said, the honey was so sweet that I got busy licking the honey and I forgot about the anaconda and the mice that were eating away at my rope until I woke up. As I told you, we don't know if the story is true, but the moral is what we're after. So he went to his sheikh and the sheikh said to him the interpretation of this dream. He said, what is this dream? He says, it's simple. If you want to interpret it my way, I'll tell you. That tiger that you are running from in your dream is a symbol of the angel of death. You can run away all you like in this life, do whatever you want, travel the world, go on holidays, go as far as you want, go to the moon and back. But the angel of death will inevitably catch up to you. Death, you will never escape it. He says, okay, then what is the well? He said, the well is your grave that is awaiting you. He said, what is the rope? He said, the rope is the life that you have before you fall into the grave. That's your life. He said, what is the anaconda? He said, if you don't fix up your life, that's the consequence of what you're going to in the hereafter. He said, what are the mice? What are the mice? He said, the mice is a symbol of the day and the night. Every day that passes, every night that passes is eating away from your life. Subhanallah. Wallahi, the meaning is true and it's supported by the Quran and Sunnah. He says, Ya Shaykh, what is the honey? What is the honey? He said, the sweet honey. The sweet honey is the indulgence of this world. You got yourself too busy with the false indulgence of this world that you forgot that there is an angel of death coming. Death is waiting, a grave is waiting, a hereafter is coming, and that your life is ending every day and you are heedless of it. Subhanallah. The meaning is true. The meaning is true. Abdullah ibn Abbas, the great companion of the Prophet ﷺ, says, I do not regret more than when the sun sets in a day and I go to sleep and I cannot count enough of extra good things that I have produced that day. He has to go to sleep knowing that he has produced good things that day. Otherwise, he has lost that day forever.
You know, there's a story that I want to share with you. It's the story of Barsisa. Barsisa was a great abid from the time of Banu Israel, great pious man. He was a monk, nowadays a sheikh. And my brothers, as I share the story of Barsisa with you, don't think of Barsisa, think about yourself. Put yourself in the shoes of Barsisa. Barsisa was a great scholar, someone who worshipped Allah, very pious. The whole community knew about him. He had his own temple where he worshipped Allah day and night. And 3 brothers, they wanted to go in jihad, but they had a sister. And they said, if we go to jihad, who's going to look after our sister? So they said, who better than Barsisa? He's a great abid, he fears Allah. Who better than Barsisa to look after our sister? So they came to Barsisa. Now look at the trick of shaitan. Look where it starts, my brother. They came to Barsisa and said, Barsisa, we want to go for jihad and we're wondering, can you look after our sister? So Barsisa immediately says, he says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. This is shaitan. No way. So the men were disappointed and they left. Then shaitan came to Barsisa. He's not shaitan. Today he's our sheikh. So we'll call him Sheikh Shaitan. So Sheikh Shaitan came to Barsisa and said, Barsisa, brother, what are you doing? These men, they want to go for jihad. They're going for good. They're going for the sake of Allah. Barsisa, if you do not look after her, who's going to look after her? You are the most noble, Barsisa. You are the most pious man. If they leave her with someone else, what do you think will happen? So Barsisa says, maybe I should look after her for the sake of Allah. Look at the trick of shaitan. When shaitan knocks on your door, shaitan does not want you to open it fully. Just a little peep, a little, who is it? That's all he wants. A little crack. That's all shaitan wants. Shaitan has all the time in the world. So he calls the brothers back. He says, listen, for the sake of Allah, I will look after your sister, but she will not stay with me. Barsisa was a man who feared Allah. He says, I will not keep your sister with me. She will stay in the house I have at the back of my temple. She will stay there and I will stay here. The brothers agreed. The brothers went to jihad. And Barsisa would cook some food for her and put the food outside his door and make her come out from her house, come all the way, grab her food and go back. Look how much he feared Allah. But what happened? He already opened the door. So this happened for some time, and shaitan has plenty of time on his hands, no problem. Until eventually, shaitan comes to Barsisa. He says, Barsisa, don't you know that when you put the food outside, she has to come from her house, walk all the way to grab her food, and this is a fitna, people can see her. So I think, Barsisa, Sheikh, I think you should put the food on her doorstep. Makes logic sense? So Barsisa cooks her food, goes to her door, knocks on her door and comes back. After some time, Barsisa, Sheikh Shaitan says to Barsisa, she still has to open her door, put the food inside the house. So this happened for some time and the brothers took long. Now Sheikh Shaitan says to Barsisa, he says, Barsisa, it's been a long time. This woman has no one to talk to, no friend, nobody to socialize. Maybe you should talk to her. Otherwise she will go outside and Allahu Alam cause fitna outside. For the sake of Allah, huh? So Barsisa now he goes to the house. Look, he still fears Allah. From outside the house he's talking to her, shouting, and she can't hear him properly. And after some time, Shaitan says, Barsisa, why are you embarrassing yourself? You're screaming and shouting. Go inside the house and speak to her there. My brothers, after some time he started speaking to her inside the house. What was a little conversation became a longer one. After talking, now he wants to see. After seeing, he now started to touch. And after touching, the great Barsisa committed zina.
This is a true horrifying story, part 30. This story took place in Medina, Saudi Arabia in the year 2001. And the person who said this story is Dr. Yasir Qadhi. He's someone that is known in the community of the Islamic Da'iyas. There are exorcists from all religions, Muslims, Christians, and Jewish, and their job is to perform an exorcism session on a person who is possessed by a demon or a jinn. When Dr. Yasir was a student, he studied in Medina. There was a known exorcist that practiced ruqya for many years, and Dr. Yasir wanted to learn from him. Back at the dorm of the Islamic college, there was a student that is a fresh convert, just recently converted to Islam. He barely knows anything about the religion, small bits of the Quran, does not know the ahadith, and doesn't know the big scholars in Islam. One day, the students were reading Quran out loud back at the dorm, and this new convert student starts to scream and roll on the ground. They knew he was possessed, so they called Dr. Yasir. Now remember, Dr. Yasir was still a student back then. He was not an expert in exorcism. He goes there and has a 2-hour session of ruqya. the ruqya that he recently learned, trying to kick out the demon out of this kid's body. As he reads Quran, he would see an alien-like movement on the kid's body. His skin would ripple up and down. A human being cannot do this intentionally. He would follow the movement with his hands reading the Quran, and he would see it move somewhere else. After the session was over, the kid looked fine, and they got lunch for everyone to eat. They say Bismillah, and they ask the new convert to join them for lunch. He said, "I'm not hungry. It's okay." As they were eating, one of the students drops a piece of his food on the ground and ignores it. The convert student immediately jumps like a snake, picks it up and gobbles it down with his left hand. Dr. Yasser lets the food go and gets up, knowing that this kid is still possessed. He tries to intimidate this demon by shouting, "I'm gonna bring Sheikh bin Uthaymeen to read on you." Now, Sheikh bin Uthaymeen is a huge Islamic scholar, and he passed away around that time in January 2001. This kid laughs hysterically with a raspy demonic voice. He gets up and he asks, "Are you going to bring him back from the dead?" This is when they all realize that this wasn't a human entity that spoke. How can this new convert know who Sheikh bin Uthaymeen is? And why would he say he's not hungry but ate food that dropped on the ground? And how was his skin rippling? Jinns can harm you, and the harm is tangible. This is not a joke. Being possessed is very, very real. Even to exorcists, it's very dangerous, and only people with very strong faith can do it.
And basically, as the story goes, a long time ago, there's a young man who's a construction worker. And he's working on the construction of a masjid, of a big grand mosque. And at the completion of the construction of this masjid, the sultan who ordered the construction of the masjid, he wanted all of the construction workers to leave. And the reason is because his daughter had asked him, this is the princess, the sultan's daughter, she made a special request that after the construction of this big, beautiful, grand masjid is finished, she wanted to be the first one to go into that masjid and pray 2 rak'ahs in the musalla with no one else there. So this was the request of the princess. So as the masjid is finished, the construction workers leave, and this one construction worker, he was falling behind. He was late, and he didn't realize that everyone else had already left. And they had allowed the princess into the masjid to go pray. So as he's leaving, he catches a glimpse of the princess inside the musalla of the masjid praying 2 rak'ahs of nafl. And the scene was just so incredible to him. It was such an amazing scene. And he basically just fell in love with the princess. It was just a very beautiful image to him, and he fell in love with her. And it became more than that. He became infatuated with her. So when he came home, he told his mother about what had happened, and he said, "You have to go to the sultan and ask for the princess's hand in marriage." And the mother said, "I can't do that. You're a construction worker. No one's the sultan's not going to have his daughter marry you." But this construction worker became infatuated. He couldn't work, he couldn't think, he couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep. He was just in a miserable state. And the mother, out of fearing for her son and his well-being, she realized that if she doesn't do something, he may die because he's refusing food and water at this point. So she goes to the palace and she asks to speak to the sultan, and the guards, they turn her away. And she insists and she says, "My son is going to die. I have to talk to the sultan." So finally, they let her talk to the sultan. And she mentions the story to the sultan, and the sultan asks that she come back with the construction worker. So they come back together, and he tells the construction worker, after everyone leaves the masjid at nighttime, after Isha prayer, you have to come and pray qiyam in this masjid for 40 nights. If you come and pray qiyam in this masjid for 40 nights straight, I will let you marry my daughter. And he said there will be someone there to make sure that you come, and if you miss a day, we'll know about it. So in 40 days, if you fulfill your end of the bargain, I will let you consider my daughter for marriage. So the construction worker is excited. This is a chance at life. So he goes the first day and he prays qiyam in the masjid after everyone leaves. And he goes the second day and the third. And after a few weeks, he notices that he's getting better. He's eating again, he's drinking again, He cares about life again. And eventually he starts to really enjoy coming to the masjid and praying qiyam when everyone else has left. To such an extent that he starts to pray to Allah, that Allah never takes away these beautiful moments that he has with him, alone in solitude, praying to him in the night. So 40 days pass, 50 days pass, 60 days pass, 70 days pass, and eventually the Sultan asks to see the construction worker. And he says, "How come you didn't come see me? You fulfilled your end of the bargain. You prayed all 40 nights. We saw that you prayed. How come you didn't come and see me?" And the construction worker turns to the Sultan and he says, "Before I saw your daughter, my heart was empty. And the first thing of beauty that my heart was exposed to was your daughter. And that's why it grabbed onto that experience. But then after I started praying in the masjid for 40 nights, my heart witnessed a beauty that was much greater than her. My heart witnessed a beauty that it has never felt before." And he tells the Sultan, he goes on to say, "Thank you so much for offering me your daughter to consider, but I am happy where I am and I am in no need of her." And he goes on his way. And he doesn't marry the princess because he had found a love and a beauty and a happiness that was much greater than just seeing the princess that one time. And this was the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the beauty of a close relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
This is a true horrifying story, part 76. This story took place in Dubai very recently. There's a group of young Emirati guys that contributed money to rent a villa in a community in Dubai. They pretty much wanted to co-rent a house so they can spend time together on the weekends. So they rented this villa. They were playing games, partying, doing wrong things, bringing girls over, stuff like that. On a normal weekend, one of these guys named Ahmed started talking to a local girl recently. After a couple of tries, he finally convinces her to come over. Before she arrived, he tells his friends not to come upstairs as he would be in one of the bedrooms with this girl. When she arrived, he immediately takes her upstairs and locks the bedroom door. In 30 minutes exactly, all the guys downstairs hear drastic screaming coming from upstairs. They see Ahmed running down the stairs, completely naked with no clothes on, scared for his life. They ask him, "What is going on?" He stutters in fear, saying, "Get out of this house, all of you." They thought he was playing some sort of prank until they see the girl run down the stairs, also with no clothes on. She was screaming with a man's voice, telling Ahmed to come back. It wasn't her normal voice. It sounded raspy and very manly. They all run outside, and one of Ahmed's friends takes his pants off and gives it to Ahmed so he can cover up. They start running and knocking on neighbors' doors in panic because calling the police will not help the situation. Maybe because there was something inside the house they didn't want the police to see. There was an Emirati neighbor nearby that allowed them to stay in his home until they figured out a solution. As they explained the story to this neighbor, Ahmed sneaks outside and sees this girl completely dressed up in her clothes, conscious and not knowing what is going on. He yells at her from a distance, saying, "Stay away from me. Don't come any closer. I want nothing to do with you." She cries in pain, not knowing what she did. She asks him, "Why are you standing far from me?" He told her to leave. She cries and begs him to drop her home because she didn't even know where she was. This was a ashiq jinn that possessed this girl, and this jinn did not allow another man to do the dirty with her. If someone wanted to be a hero while these things were happening, something very bad could have happened and lives could have been taken. This is a true horrifying story that took place in Ar'ar, Saudi Arabia. This story has also been aired on TV by a couple of imams confirming it. I will add a video source in the comments. A Saudi Arabian man from Ar'ar has 4 brothers. All 4 brothers are married except him. People always ask him, why didn't you get married yet? And he always gets aggressive when someone asks him about marriage. He hates it. He doesn't want to get married. So people knew this man is not someone you should speak about marriage with. A few weeks later, this man was invited to a wedding. In most Muslim countries, weddings separate men and women. The men's wedding was held at a farmland somewhere deep in the desert. As he was driving alone at night to the wedding, he heard a woman screaming, "Please don't leave me, please help." He panicked and quickly turned on Quran in the car. Every time he hears the woman screaming, he would look outside and see a wolf. The screams wouldn't stop, and every time there was a scream, the same wolf would appear. He eventually made it to the wedding, and then he told a couple of people what happened to him on the way there. On the next day, he tells his good friend what happened. They both hop in the car in daylight and they go look for that woman. For hours, they were looking. They found traces from the wolf, but they didn't find anything else. A week later, this man went to a majlis, and he announces that he is convinced to get married for some reason. And everyone there was shocked. You, out of all people, want to get married all of a sudden. Something is not right. He had enough. He decided to go to a sheikh, and he tells him the full story. I hated marriage. I always got aggressive when someone brought it up. One day, when I drove to a wedding at night, I heard a woman screaming for help, but all I saw was a wolf. And then a few days later, I was convinced with getting an arranged marriage. Please explain what is happening to me. The sheikh laughs and tells him, you were attached by an admirer, a jinn that was emotionally attached to you. She made you hate getting married. The night you drove in the desert, she was following you. She tried to possess you, but she couldn't. And that wolf you saw killed the jinn. Jinns are known to be afraid of wolves because a wolf is the only animal that can take a jinn's life. And when you heard a woman scream, it was the jinn getting attacked. And now, you are no longer against marriage because the curse you had was killed by a wolf.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya Nuh, I order you to go and construct an ark under our eyes and address me no further on behalf of those who have been unjust. They shall be drowned in the flood. I'm going to send Jibreel alayhi salam to you, and he's going to teach you how you're going to build the ark. Nuh alayhi salam had asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save him and his family and the believers. Allah promised him that he will save him and his family and the believers, except those who disbelieve. Allah ordered Nuh alayhi salam to go up to a mountain to build the big ship. So Jibreel alayhi salam used to tell him how to prepare the wood. He'd tell him to carve the wood and make it curved so that it can sail easily and it can float, and to use nails and wood. The ark was huge. Some of them say it was 80 yards, some of them say 100. And they agree that it was at least 30 yards high. It was made of 3 stories, and it took him a long time to build this ark. The disbelievers started to mock him. They used to pass by him and say, Ya Nuh, now you're a carpenter? And before you were a prophet? We told you he's crazy. Allah told him, فَإِذَا فَارَتْ النُّورِ When the oven floods, carry on board your ark from every creature a pair. They were in the first story. In the second story, they say it was the humans. And in the third story, were for the birds to land and stay there. Why the oven? Because it's meant to be for fire. Allah says, and so we opened up the doors of the heaven with gushing water, and we burst the earth and made holes from every part, from mountains, from valleys, from everywhere. The water of the sky and the water of the earth met together. The ark was covered from the top and from the bottom. So the water didn't fill the ark. The Nuh alayhi salam, he had 4 sons. Yam, Sam, Ham, and Yafith. Among the people who disbelieved was his son. Yam disbelieved. Nuh alayhi salam looked at his son Yam, and he said to him, oh my son, come aboard with us. Don't be among the people who disbelieved. What did his son reply? He said, I'm going to go to a high mountain and it will save me from the water. What did Nuh alayhi salam reply? Today there is no protection from the
law of Allah except who He has given mercy to. As they were having the conversation, suddenly the waves intercepted between them both and took his son away, and he was among the ones who drowned. Immediately Nuh alayhi salam turned and he said, "Oh my Lord, my son is part of my family, and your promise is true." Allah replied immediately to him and said to him, he said, "Oh Nuh, he's not one of your family." In the earlier verse, Allah said to him, "I will save your family except the ones who disbelieved."
And Nuh alayhi salam and the people that followed him were saved. They lived and stayed in the ark. And every single human being and every single animal were all destroyed except Nuh, and those are on board with Nuh alayhi salam. And the people with Nuh in the ark, stuck in the ark for days, months, years, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the grounds to stop exploding and gushing water. And then this earth became dry again, and the ark settles on a mountain called Judi. Mankind had restarted all over again with Nuh and the people around Nuh. And not only mankind, living things, living beings also restarted all over again. The only children that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala maintained and the only offsprings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed are the offsprings of Nuh. That's why they say Nuh is Adam number 2.
Because all the descendants go back to Nuh alayhi salam, no one else. And Nuh alayhi salam lived 350 years after the flood.
From the progeny of Sam, there came from him the Arabs, the Persians, and the Romans. From Yafith, there came the prosperity of the Turks and Ya'juj and Ma'juj, Gog and Magog. And from Ham started the lineage of Sudanese and the Berbers, the dark-looking people.
And from the children of Sam started to spread all the way into the Arabian Peninsula. And one of the tribes, a tribe by the name of Ad, comes from.
In the last podcast, I spoke about the Shams al-Ma'arif book.
Yeah.
And a lot of people on TikTok, they rate it as the world's most dangerous book. But it is not the world's most dangerous book. The world's most dangerous book is actually called Al-Ghazali.
Al-Ghazali is like...
Al-Ghazali is actually a book that is believed to be written by jinns themselves. They are the authors, and people that talk to jinns were the ones writing their words down in the book. Shams al-Ma'arif starts off with verses of the Quran. It just teaches you how to do black magic, how to clear black magic, some other rituals that are not dangerous, some things that are very bad. Al-Ghazali, on the other hand, it is a ritual from start to finish. It is a short book. People who do witchcraft and black magic, there are like, when you enter that realm of jinns, you have like a pretty much, I don't know how to phrase this, but it's like a rank system, or you need to, like, you earn your way up. For you to have access to Al-Ghazali book, you need to be at a very certain high rank or level in their world. You need to earn to read this book. And if you don't have that certain
ranking, status.
If you don't have that certain status, then very bad things will happen to you if you read this book. It's so lethal that I've seen videos of imams, they don't even want to touch the book. Sheikhs, bro, they don't want to touch the book. They wear gloves while they go through the papers. Previous civilizations, about 300, 400, 500 years ago, they burned all the copies of this book, because most civilizations back then in this region were very Islamic. So the online versions are not the real Al-Ghazali book, but the Al-Ghazali book is the world's most dangerous book. You cannot read this. If you read this, actual bad things will happen to you. Just having it in your house, bad things will happen to you.
There was a doctor in Canada. He was talking to a sheikh. The sheikh asked the doctor, what was the most strangest thing that you've seen in your work? He said, one day I was in the hospital, in the emergency area, and there was a young individual, an adult, around 21 years old. His name was Muhammad. He was unconscious. So he went up to him just to check what was his problem. This individual had AIDS. He got the phone number, he talked to the mother, and he said, listen, I'm the doctor at the moment here with your son. What's happened? What's going on with your son? She mentioned, oh doctor, my son has been an individual who's far from the path. Far from the path. He doesn't pray, he doesn't know anything from the Quran. He has a certain girlfriend that he's with, who he won't leave. Oh doctor, I've tried my best to guide this individual, but he doesn't listen. Anyway, after a while, this brother Muhammad, he wakes up, the doctor came to him. But the machines that were connected to him, you know, those heart monitors and all this, they started to make certain sounds. And the doctors and the nurses understood that this is a time where he may pass away. So the doctor here now, as any Muslim would do, We have to try to get him to say the Shahada. We need him to repent back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before he passes, he gets on the phone and he says, listen, you better get here because your son's in a very, very bad state. You need to come to the hospital now. She said, I'll do my best. So he went now. The doctor went to the patient, Muhammad, and he said to him, قُل لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. He wouldn't say anything. He said, Ya Muhammad, قُل لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. He wouldn't say anything. Ya Muhammad, قُل لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Muhammad looks at him. He opens up his mouth. Here the doctor thought, that's it. He's going to say some words of beauty. He said, I want my girlfriend. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stopped this individual from repenting and remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know the one who dies and his last words are La ilaha illallah, what happens to him? He enters Jannah. This individual was stopped due to his sins. And I'm asking you all by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now is your time to come back. Before you're on your deathbed, before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down Malik al-Maut to take your soul. So this individual, Muhammad, comes and he passes away. His mother made it. And she said, Ya Doctor, Wallah, he was a good kid, but he wanted to go to Hajj when he became older. And ya youth, all the young brothers that are here and the young sisters that are inside, you always think, you know what, I'm too young. I'm too young to grow my beard. I'm too young to put on the hijab. I'm too young to dress properly. I'm too young to do this and that. Wallahi, you're not too young.
This is a true horrifying story that took place in Ar'ar, Saudi Arabia. This story has also been aired on TV by a couple of imams confirming it. I will add the video source in the comments. A Saudi Arabian man from Ar'ar has 4 brothers. All 4 brothers are married except him. People always ask him, why didn't you get married yet? And he always gets aggressive when someone asks him about marriage. He hates it. He doesn't want to get married. So people knew this man is not someone you should speak about marriage with. A few weeks later, this man was invited to a wedding. In most Muslim countries, weddings separate men and women. The men's wedding was held at a farmland somewhere deep in the desert. As he was driving alone at night to the wedding, he heard a woman screaming, "Please don't leave me, please help." He panicked and quickly turned on Quran in the car. Every time he hears the woman screaming, he would look outside and see a wolf. The screams wouldn't stop, and every time there was a scream, the same wolf would appear. He eventually made it to the wedding, and then he told a couple of people what happened to him on the way there. On the next day, he tells his good friend what happened. They both hop in the car in daylight and they go look for that woman. For hours, they were looking. They found traces from the wolf, but they didn't find anything else. A week later, this man went to a majlis, and he announces that he is convinced to get married for some reason. And everyone there was shocked. You, out of all people, want to get married all of a sudden. Something is not right. He had enough. He decided to go to a sheikh, and he tells him the full story. I hated marriage. I always got aggressive when someone brought it up. One day, when I drove to a wedding at night, I heard a woman screaming for help, but all I saw was a wolf. And then a few days later, I was convinced with getting an arranged marriage. Please explain what is happening to me. The sheikh laughs and tells him, you were attached by an admirer, a jinn that was emotionally attached to you. She made you hate getting married. The night you drove in the desert, she was following you. She tried to possess you, but she couldn't. And that wolf you saw killed the jinn. Jinns are known to be afraid of wolves because a wolf is the only animal that can take a jinn's life. And when you heard a woman scream, it was the jinn getting attacked. And now, you are no longer against marriage because the curse you had was killed by a wolf.
Musa alayhi salam, he traveled all the way to Yemen. Musa alayhi salam did not have a job, did not have a wife, did not have a house. Musa alayhi salam had no food, no drink, nothing, none. He found 2 sisters that they had their flock with them and they were trying to bring water to the sheep and the goats. He voluntarily took all the sheep and watered them. He immediately by himself suggested to help the sisters. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that after he finished, he went, he is exhausted, he's very tired. He went to the shade of a tree and he made this beautiful dua. رب إني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير. My brothers and sisters, he was in need for a wife, he was in need for a house, he was in need for a job, for money, he was in need for food. But when he sat down under the tree, he did not ask for any of the four. He just left the dua open. رب إني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير. Ya Allah, I am in need of any good from you, any good. And Ya Allah, subhanallah, look at this, how beautiful is this dua. There's nothing wrong with mentioning specifically what you want. Absolutely, there's nothing wrong. But subhanallah, when you have so much trust in Allah that He's going to grant you exactly what's good for you. Because I might be asking for wealth, and wealth is not good for me. I might be asking for a specific wife, and that wife or that spouse is not good for me. I left it. He left it to Allah Azza wa Jal open. Ya Allah, I am faqir to whatever you bless me with. I am in need, Ya Allah. Subhanallah. What happened? Did Musa alayhi salam, after this dua, did he get a wife? He got a choice between two wives, between the two sisters. The father said, choose any of my sisters. Did he get a house? Absolutely. The wife came with a house. Did he get a job? 10-year contract. Allahu Akbar. Don't ever think that Allah does not know about your situation. Don't ever think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not aware of what you're going through. Beg Allah Azza wa Jal, express what you want from Him. Tell Him, open up, shed some tears, subhanallah, and leave it to Him. Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khayrin faqir. And Allah Azza wa Jal will bless you with whatever is best for you. With whatever is best for you, subhanallah.
This is a true horrifying story, part 29. This is an old famous story known as The Boy and the Jinn. This story took place in Nottingham, England in the early 90s. There is a massive abandoned building that has 120 rooms, many dorms, and very big halls. The building was bought to start an Islamic madrasa, meaning school for boys. They renovated the place and scheduled classes. When the school started, all the students were warned and restricted from accessing the west side of the building. No reasons given, just no one is allowed to go to the west side of the school. One of the students, let's give him a name. His name is Imran. Imran was 13 years old at the time, and he's from Bangladesh. He does not speak a word of English nor Arabic. The only language Imran spoke was Bengali. Imran was a quiet kid. He didn't have any friends. He always walked alone, sleeps alone, and eats alone. One day, Imran strays off to the west side of the building on his own, the side that he was restricted from accessing. He comes back after a while with a Quran in his hand. He goes to the Quran teacher and tells him, test me in Arabic. Remember, he does not speak a word in any other language but Bengali. The teacher laughs it off and starts to test him out. Verse after verse, he realizes that this student memorized the whole Quran efficiently, and everyone was extremely shocked about this. On that same night, all the students head to their dorms and go to sleep. During the middle of the night, they banged the principal's room, screaming, "There's a jinn, there's a jinn." The principal found out that while the students were asleep, the walls in their dorm would bang and scratch, and there will be voices coming out the walls saying the name Imran. Then it all added up. They figured out that Imran was possessed by a jinn that was a hafiz of the Quran. So an Islamic exorcism wouldn't really do much. The sheikh would put his hand on Imran and recite the ayat, but the jinn would come back with the following verse to break the exorcism. The ruqya cannot work on a jinn that memorized the Quran. And the jinn himself is challenging the raqi on who knows the Quran better. One of the imams that witnessed this whole situation asked to send Imran back home for 1 month, and that should treat his situation. They send him home. He comes back after 1 month, not knowing any Arabic, not knowing any English, doesn't know anything about the Quran, the same old quiet kid. And no one ever dared going near the west side of the building after what happened to Imran.
Do you know, the people who first converted to Islam were severely tortured because of this man. He was bitterly hostile to the Prophet Muhammad, and it was he who had the idea to torture the Muslims in Mecca. He was the Prophet's cousin. As time passed, Allah's guidance came to him. His heart was open to accept Islam. After converting to Islam, he kept begging the Prophet Muhammad for forgiveness, but the Prophet always turned away. His sadness was so deep. Until one moment at the Battle of Hunain, he was forgiven by the Prophet, then prayed for. At the end of his life, he had time to dig his own grave. If you know who he is, write in the comments column.
There's a prophet in Islam who beat up an angel. So the story is about Musa alayhi salam and his little run-in with the angel of death, Malik al-Maut, right? One day Allah Azza wa Jal sends Malik al-Maut, the angel of death, to go take Musa alayhi salam's life, right? Musa was a prophet. He did a good job. He served his purpose. It's just time. It's time to go now. It's like Malik al-Maut heads over to Musa just like he would any other person. He's gonna go over there, take his life, and the story, right? Wrong. Goes to Musa. Musa's chilling. Malik al-Maut comes to obviously do his job, right? Musa opens his eyes. He sees Malik al-Maut. What do you think Musa's reaction is? Musa got so scared. Musa got so scared. He said, "Hold this." So obviously Malik al-Maut is there like, "What? Ah!" He punched me. Malik al-Maut goes back to Allah and he's like, "Yeah, Allah, your servant's not ready for death." And he gave me a black eye, by the way. Allah Azza wa Jal heals the eye first, and then he's like, "Go back to Musa alayhi salam, and I want you to tell him, put your hand on the back of this ox. For every single hair that your hand covers, I'll give you an extra year, you know?" So Malik al-Maut makes his way back to Musa alayhi salam, and he's like, "Hey, listen, put your hand on this ox. For every hair that your hand covers, you'll get an extra year." Musa's like, "Hey, by the way, about earlier, no hard feelings, my bad, my bad. Didn't know you're an angel." However, is there an option B by any chance? Is there? Malik goes, yeah, of course, death, like now, today. Okay. Actually, I'm ready to meet Allah, but I have one request. Can I die near the crib? Can I? Musa requests as his dying wish to die near the Holy Land, and Allah Azza wa Jal grants it. So that's the story of Musa alayhi salam beating up Malik al-Maut.